Hello everybody, my name is Doreen Chaussadas and today we will talk about biologgers and their impact on their career. Biologgers are extremely convenient tools because they allow us to collect data that we would not be able to get otherwise. But as you can see, they come in various shapes and sizes, and one could wonder what their effect on their career is. For decades, researchers have used the same rule, which is that as long as the logger weighs less than 5% of the carrier's body mass, it should not be associated with negative effect. Surprisingly enough, this rule actually comes from this review from 1969, which never really tested it, but rather reviewing the literature at the time found that nobody had gone above 5% of body mass and no effect was recorded. So until we know more, we should stay below 5%. And now, as much as 50 years after this review, a recent meta-analysis done over 82 studies did find negative effects for most of them, and did find that the effect was worse when the device was heavier, but only 8 of those went above 5%. So because researchers have followed this rule so efficiently for so long, we still don't know if 5% of body mass is a good threshold. And this is the question that we are asking today: how relevant the threshold is 5% of body mass? And to answer this question, we will use homing pigeons, which are very convenient models because of their homing behavior, so we can release them and they will fly back to the loft, and because they cope really well with handling and being around humans. We will equip them with GPS and accelerometer and added load. And in the past, such experiments have been attempted, but the device at the moment was quite big and it ended up being drag rather than weight that was creating most of the negative impacts observed. But our device being much smaller than theirs, we hope that we won't have this problem. The pigeons will be free flying into a rural landscape. We will first habituate them to a route, and they will be habituated together as a flock. Note that for the rest of the experiment, they will be flown one by one so they don't influence each other's behavior. So we will train them from a release site to the loft, and they will be trained wearing the empty backpacks. But after that, we will realize a pilot experiment in which we will use only a subset of individuals, and these individuals won't be used for the rest of the experiment. And in this pilot, the purpose is basically to find the range of loads that we should use for the experiment. Once this is done, we'll start the actual experiment, and we'll start it with a control experiment in which pigeons will be flown on the route with the minimum possible charge with it, which is only GPS and accelerometer. And then we will finally trial them with different loads within the range that we found during the pilot experiment. We hope that this design will help us find out the effect of added weight on their flying behavior, and possibly one of the most surprising expectations we have is that added weight should actually increase speed of flight. We know that from basic aerodynamics laws, saying that basically to stay aloft, birds need to create a lift that will compensate the weight. And the way they do that is by creating a thrust. So if the weight is more important, if we add a weight on them, they have to create a bigger lift, and to do so, they have to create a bigger thrust. In other words, birds need to go faster to compensate added weight. We also might expect them to take breaks at some point, as well as using the landscape differently, maybe using more energy efficient routes, or use different features of the landscape. And also we will record the energetical cost, which we will do based on accelerometer data, which will give us wind beat frequency, which then we can convert in energetic cost. We obviously want our study to be used by many people, but before you apply that to other species, be mindful of the fact that pigeons have actually been selected to be fast flyers, meaning that they are not really efficient ones, so the energetic cost of added weight might be more important for them than for other birds. And also, it's been theoretically demonstrated that actually transmitter load affect birds depending on their mass, and namely smaller birds can carry relatively heavier charges. And on that note, I thank you all for your attention. I hope this presentation was clear and interesting.